Okay, so that's recording. Cool. Hi, g'day. I'm Mike from Wild Community and Wild Open. We're here today talking to Valerie about her shift into eco-village lifestyle and exploring eco-villages. Valerie, hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good.
Yeah. You've been saying you've been a bit busy recently?
Yeah, this week in particular and last few weeks have been quite hectic.
Yeah.
Um, that just seems to be what London life feels like.
Yeah,
So it's
right.
actually one of the reasons why, need to get away from this.
Cool. Well, do you want to just give a little bit of an introduction of yourself and background and how you've kind of come to this place of wanting to make a shift in your lifestyle?
Yeah, sure. So I guess how this has all come about. So I've been a life coach for the last, how long has it been now? 4.5 years. So yeah, life coach and sort of facilitator, trainer of different things. And I guess over this period, what I've noticed is that I've become more and more sensitive to my environment. As a result of the work that I do, it means that I have to be much more open. Working with people and using my intuition in service of that work means that I've become more sensitive. And so I've been noticing the impact of my environment on my well-being more and more. And it's reached a point where I really feel the absence of nature in my life. That's the main thing that I notice on a personal level. And in parallel to that, I think what's been emerging for me over the last few years is actually a kind of helplessness in the face of what's going on in the world. Helplessness, and at the same time feeling really deeply affected by it. So the sadness that I feel for what I see happening in the world, like literally when I allow myself to go there, really breaks my heart. And what's gotten me to this point is that I just refuse feeling helpless in that way anymore. So this decision to leave London after 18 years and explore this different lifestyle is my way of getting into action and doing something, in order to respond to the emergency that we're facing.
Mm. It's pretty deep work, really, and quite an emotional journey. At least it has been for me. I
Yeah.
mean, what do you see? What do you think we're facing? Like, what's your perspective on the situation?
Yeah, it's so interesting because it feels like there's a lot of noise in my head, as you ask me that question. Because one thing that what creates doubt in me and uncertainty and discomfort is this sense that basically it seems that you can use the science supposedly to justify, every argument and its contrary, basically. So, thinking about climate change and all of that stuff. Um, Sometimes I feel like I don't know. Is this like, should I be worrying? Am I making this up? People are saying that it's really bad, but it's basically, yeah, the climate emergency. But for me, it's not just that actually. Feeling that doubt, what I then sort of turn to is like my own experience. And what I then sort of am aware of is that in my own personal experience, and also in terms of the work that I do, working with lots of people, I coach in organizations, and I just see the levels of stress and disconnection that people experience on a daily basis. I see the impact. I kind of use myself as a guinea pig, if you like, and sort of just notice the difference, sort of being in an environment like London that is so focused and based on this consumerist model that is always constantly pushing us to focus on what we don't have, and always this kind of wanting more. And I notice the impact that it has on me, and especially being able to contrast that to when I'm in nature. And when I'm in nature, nothing really matters. Like it's all very simple. So I turn to that, and also just looking at how stressed people are, trying to sort of, you know, run as fast as they can to keep up with the game. And that tells me something's just not right. So it's kind of all of those things together. And just the general disconnection of living in a big city like London, where people don't even seem to behave like humans anymore, where in order to protect ourselves, we're basically, you know, just kind of shutting ourselves off completely. That's not how I want to live.
Yeah, completely. It's really interesting. And do you find that the people around you have any sense of that? Like, are they aware of the situation or the?
Some,
Mm.
but if I think about the majority of people that I work with, and that is part of my, I mean, I just have such deep sadness around that, which is that people just seem to think that there's something wrong with them, that they're not keeping up, but that there doesn't seem to be an awareness of like, hang on a minute, there's something wrong about, you know, the system or the bigger picture of what we're experiencing. Instead, it's sort of turned inwards, and you know, it's like stress, anxiety. People describe lack of confidence, and it just breaks my heart. And I feel very helpless as well, because you know, as a coach, it's like what I'm negotiating at the moment is finding that fine line between holding the space for people, you know, to do whatever work they need to do given where they are in their own lives, and my own agenda, which is frankly what I like to do is just kind of do a collective shaking, going, wake up, people, you know?
Please.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. But they do. It's interesting. But they do, like most people I speak to, you know, living in the cities, etc., do have some kind of inkling that there is something wrong, but they
Yeah.
don't. A lot of them don't really go any further than that. Like for whatever reason, like they don't think it's can be changed, or they, as you
Yeah.
say, they think there's something wrong with themselves, or they're just powerless to to make any significant change, or
Yeah.
unable to view a different way of living, I guess, is a.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about that, and what I see is like thinking that things are just the way they are, and therefore that kind of powerlessness and helplessness, that they can't imagine that it could be any different because this is what they know. And also the other thing that I think is really important to pay attention to for all of us who want to, you know, to change things, is that what we're asking people, what we would like people to face, is very, very uncomfortable. On an emotional level, it really takes, I'm not sure what it takes, but there's something about like being able to literally hold very uncomfortable emotions. And that's why it's not just a question of like, let me give you the facts and figures of this, and you know, on the back of that, of course you're going to make some changes. It's way, way more complex than that. And I think it's really important to make space for that experience. Actually, it's scary, you know, let's be honest about it.
Yeah, it's completely terrifying. I know I've been through, you know, the last 3 months. I've, you know, dived back into the science and the situation, and I've just been through a massive roller coaster of climate grief and terror, and you know, hopelessness, and then you know, and now basically almost back to my normal stance, which is kind of a stance of urgency but optimistic hope, if you like.
Yeah.
Because personally, I think we've got all the solutions. We've just got to start doing them.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'm curious, like, what's different having gone through that? Because I'm struck that you said I'm back to my stance, but I imagine something is different from having been on that roller coaster.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it. What has changed for me? But look, I feel more. and I kind of use titration. Like I dip in a little bit, and then when it's too intense for me, I kind of step back and then ignore it, knowing that what I'm doing is, or at least I feel, is part of the solution. So I kind of like work on the solution and bury my head in the sand at the same time. But I think what I'm feeling now is that I'm not doing the burying my head in the sand so much. Because part of what I'm doing is, building my capacity to have these kind of conversations on a day-to-day basis, like this one.
Yeah.
Which means, acknowledging the situation and the possible outcomes.
Yeah.
Consciously and holding that. Like, one of my biggest investigations is to how to have this conversation in a way that's kind, compassionate, and empowering without triggering people into into trauma or emotion or denial or running away too much. And maybe that's not a bad thing either. Like, we're all going to go through our own process around it.
Yeah. I think, to me, it's all about kind of calibrating that and remembering that we stay in control. And I love what you were describing in terms of that sort of dipping in and coming out, and because I think that like that's the way to do it, because feeling those emotions has an impact on us, and remembering that we can remain in control of that we can allow ourselves to feel. And then when it's too much, it's also okay to actually take a step back and do whatever it is that you need to do, whether you call it burying your head in the sand or just kind of getting on with stuff, whatever it is. But it's like finding that balance, I think. And I think for me in this whole thing, emotion and how we relate to emotion is absolutely key. So I love to hear sort of what you've been through, because I hear that in what you were sharing.
Sure. Well, what I've been through, like emotionally, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, all of it, which is like, pretty much all emotions. Like, waking up in sheer terror sometimes about what's happening, and then moving from that to despair and hopelessness. And then into guilt and blame, right? Because of, well, firstly of myself, because, I've been on this planet for 52 years and I've certainly contributed to the situation. And 40, when I was a teenager, like I just looked at it and went, oh my God, we're in trouble. And so part of me feels guilty about not doing more. And then part of me realizes actually I've done a lot, but I still, sometimes have that guilt and self-blame. And then that blame, I can extend it to others as well, and our ancestors, and to, especially the vocal people on the planet who just deny it and encourage more coal mining or more environmental destruction. And then, real sadness about the species that we've lost. And that we're losing, the animals that are dying and the conditions that they're in, and then the ones that are endangered. Confusion, like you're saying before, it's like the whole situation is too big, especially from a rational perspective, to make sense of. Like, I don't think anyone on the planet actually knows the situation. We don't know, fully understands the situation. So it's beyond our capacity to make sense of rationally. So, taking all that in, and then, letting go of each of those emotions really, and understanding, it's not useful to get stuck in any of them. In the blame or the fear or the despair or the, otherwise I'd never get out of bed. So
that's right.
And coming back to I've done a lot of work around the beauty, because we do live on an amazing planet, and it is still beautiful. So, and then that leads me back to the question of, what is it to be human? Like, why am I here? What am I doing with my life, and how can I best contribute?
Yeah.
And I think this really hits the evolutionary edge that the human species is on at the moment. It's this bringing together of the masculine and feminine, the rationality and the feeling, and taking responsibility for the future and the interconnectedness of things. So a move to stewardship. And I've been cultivating that in my life consciously for the last 10 years. And so sometimes be careful what you wish for, I guess, because it's intense. And I think two of the skills that we can all that would be useful for all of us probably to develop is, one, what we've been talking about, the emotional capacity to look at these things and discuss them and not shy away. To connect to yourself and understand what's truly important and why I feel this way. And then the other capacity is adaptability, like the ability to roll with the changes, and to make the most of them. So I guess the other skill is optimism or something. Taking a positive stance. So,
and what I've been discovering more recently is how those two things that you've just named are so deeply linked, in the sense that what we feel, we can actually, harness the power of that to be the fuel for our action and the way we adapt. So learning to actually, I think we've developed in the way that we relate to emotion in our culture, is certainly what I know, like more Western culture, I guess. Emotion has become like this scary thing, and base thing. And as a result, we're supposed to kind of control it and cut ourselves off from it. When actually the potential that we have and the healing that I see is available to us is coming together to feel what we really feel and use that to, almost perform some kind of alchemy that moves us into action. And as I'm saying that, I feel like I'm just, describing Joanna Macy's work around the work that reconnects, because basically that's what it is. And I deeply believe that there's something very, very powerful there that needs to happen.
I completely agree. I think once we're connected back to our emotions and what's important to us and what we value and what we feel for, then there's no way we'd be treating the planet like this.
That's right.
And there's no way we'd be treating each other the way we do a lot of the time.
I agree.
And part of my learning, I guess, in the last few months is around how to engage in the climate debate. And actually the conclusion I've come to is not to engage in the climate debate, but to bring it back to personal observations and personal feelings. Because when I simplify it, and I'm not denying the science, and I'm not even saying whether it's right or wrong, that's fine. But what I'm saying for me is what's a much deeper motivator is to just look at what's happening and how I feel about it. And even if there wasn't a climate crisis, then am I happy with the amount of deforestation? Am I happy with the amount of species loss? Am I happy, with the way we're living? And the answer is no.
Yeah. Which is why I'm doing what I'm doing. Exactly.
Yeah. Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah.
So what is it you're doing?
So it started a few months ago, like part of this whole sort of reflection on, I just like the way I'm living right now is just not working for me. There's something really deeply wrong. From that kind of emerged this this dream of wanting someday to be part of creating an eco-village. So on the back of that, my partner and I went and attended an EDE in Danano in Italy in August, where we met. And I think I really enjoyed the program. It was intense, but for somebody at my stage of investigation, which is very early on, it was just such a fantastic introduction to, you know, what an eco-village even is, and all the different dimensions that need to be thought of if you want to make it work. And I do feel that, you know, by the end of it, I left going, wow, this is a much bigger job than I had any idea whatsoever.
Yeah.
Which is kind of slightly daunting. So with that sort of observation, what we've decided to do is we're leaving London. So I've been here 18 years, like I said earlier. My partner's been here 23 years. So big change in our lives. And what we've planned to do is for 2020 to go and visit a bunch of eco-villages and actually spend time there, volunteer. And I have two main aims in mind. One is actually, you know, being realistic, actually having the experience, because I've lived this way for the last 18 years. I had the experience of EDE, but it was a very self-contained 1 month. I was going there for, you know, to do a program, and then I was coming back to my reality here in London. For me, this is different because I won't have the reality of London to come back to. So I want to see how that changes, and also things around, you know, what's it like having to worry about earning money in that kind of lifestyle as opposed to what I know here. So I want to check that out. And the other thing is, the bit I'm really looking forward to is I want to learn the skills that are needed. You know, I want to get my hands dirty. You know, I want to get closer to the earth. That's something that I'm just longing for so much. I've got I haven't been much of a plant person up to now. The only plant in my flat right now is this one basil pot.
Great.
And I've been taking care of it, and it's by the window, and I've been observing it, and I've just been blown away by how much joy it has given me to just look after this little plant and to give it water and to see how it's doing, and to, you know, give it love and see how it turns itself towards the light outside. It just gives me so much joy, and I want more of that in my life for sure. So those are our two aims. In kind of, visiting eco-villages next year.
Yeah, cool. So maybe just can you explain like what for you an eco-village is, but can you also, you've used the acronym EDE, can you explain what that is and what that kind of process was?
Yeah, sure. So my understanding of an eco-village is a way of living together in community. So that's a really important aspect of it for me. Living in community in a way that is it's not only kind of eco-friendly or sustainable, but for me, it's the dimension of it's regenerative to the earth. That's sort of my understanding of it, or what I want it to be, for sure. And there's something about living in a way that is much more closely aligned to the cycles of nature. Those are the things that I really want more of in my life. And the EDE is Ecovillage Design Education Program. My hesitation there was, is it the Gaia Foundation? Gaia Education, right? Who's designed that program?
Yes. Well, it's Gaia Education, or it's GEN, the Global Eco-Village Network.
So Gaia Education being the sort of the education arm of GEN, right?
Okay, cool.
I got confused, and
I think I'm not 100% clear either. And there's a lot of overlap in what they do anyway. So
yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And that was a whole month with
Yeah. So I mean, it's a really brilliant curriculum because it sort of uh, describes the 4 dimensions that are needed for an eco village to be sustainable. That was my understanding of it. And those 4 dimensions are the ecological, the economic, what I call the social, so more around like relationships, decision making, governance, that kind of stuff, and worldview, which for me is the spiritual, another way of calling the spiritual dimension. And
mm,
what I loved about sort of the concept that they were presenting and offering is that you really need all 4 dimensions for an eco village to work or to last through time. And I can totally see that, especially thinking about, many initiatives that exist in the world today, and how it always feels like there's something maybe missing, or that it's only part of the answer. So what I really liked about the EDE was this sort of very holistic approach to it. Yeah.
mm.
So it was 4 weeks. It's quite intense because there's a lot of content, but I found it really, really useful because it was that sort of global overview. It was very rich.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And so your plan at the moment, so you're currently in London and you're about
Yes.
to pack up house,
Yes.
sell everything, get in a car
Yeah.
and go, or what's the logistics?
So yeah. So what we've decided to do to kind of give ourselves a little bit of a break, and yeah, we are downsizing massively. So I'm going to get rid of all of my furniture, getting rid of as much of my belongings as possible, like books. I'm looking at my bookcase just there, which is half empty already because I'm just pulling lots of stuff out. So just trying to shed as much as possible, because here's another thing in my desire to follow this lifestyle. I just want more simplicity in my life.
Mm,
Because more and more, I think what I've become aware of is just the human cost of material possessions, and how much it kind of, it weighs me down. And also just the human cost of maintaining all of this stuff. Like, you know, just to be able to live in London, I have to work to a degree which doesn't feel sustainable just in order to pay my bills.
mm,
To me, that is nuts. It's just like there's something to me just there that's fundamentally wrong. And so the question for me is like, why would I want to do that to myself? So that's another motivation as well in doing this. So we're doing that. And then because because this is so brand new to us and we don't have that many contacts, or we don't have any links with any eco villages as such, to sort of reduce the stress. What we're doing is we're going to go and establish a base at my parents who live in France, live in a quiet sort of town, sort of not far from Paris. And we just want to establish a base there. And from there, we'll kind of be traveling to different eco villages. And where we are right now, again, because it just felt like too much to handle, sort of, just working and everything, plus moving after such a long period of time. We had thought of starting to research eco villages to apply to go volunteer, and it was just too much. So we've given ourselves permission to do that once we've landed at my parents. Because one thing that, if I've learned anything from the last 4 years, it's been around how important it is to manage your energy. And therefore, I feel very, very lucky and grateful that we've got my parents who can provide that base for us. And so we're going to sort of use that to actually recharge, and then, sort of move from there.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I think you've, the being kind and being gentle with yourself is is a really good approach. And there's no time limit on making this change. I mean, there's
Yeah.
obviously a sense of urgency, um,
Yeah.
but at the same time, um, taking the time to make the transition so it's not too much of a shock, and then it's overwhelming too much, and you go back to run back to London.
Exactly. It's like, I hate this, kind of go back to what you know kind of thing. I don't want to do that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
I did the same kind of transition maybe 10 years ago. Like, I literally sold everything in a couple of months, and I knew I could feel I was working up to it. And then one day I just went time.
Yeah.
And, literally went from a house load of stuff down to a bootload of stuff in a car, and headed south.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that feels really important, because I'm thinking, like, in my process of doing this, um, I would love to sort of kind of create some kind of bridge, if you like, for people who might be in a similar sort of situation or having similar feelings and not knowing where to start, which is why I love this project that you're doing, and these interviews. And I think it's really important, because the brain just goes, from one state to another, and does not allow for actually the transition that's needed. And, like you said, that you work yourself up to it. Same for me. Like, this whole thought process started 18 months ago.
mm,
And I can tell you that 18 months ago, I was like, it was literally, oh my God, I cannot be in London anymore. And almost within the same breath, it's like, I am terrified, I cannot leave London.
yeah,
And here I am now 18 months later, and it's happening. And
yeah,
it's sort of, making space for that. I love that you're talking about sort of being kind to yourself, because it's actually making me remember how important that is to make these changes sustainable, right? That's what it's in service of.
yeah, exactly. There's no point moving into sustainability in an unsustainable way, right?
Right.
It doesn't quite, which kind of lots of people kind of do sometimes. So
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. And so we're recording this in the towards the end of November.
Yeah.
You're planning on making the move
So
in,
in just over 2 months, no,
yeah.
actually 2 months from now, is kind of, we'll be moving on the 29th or 30th of January. So
Okay.
in a couple of months. And from London, we go to France first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are, like, for you, what are the kind of, like, fears or concerns or emotions or worries that have come up? Like, what have you had to overcome?
Yeah. Well, overcome or still dealing with and managing.
Yes.
I think the biggest fear around the material, if you like. So
Mm,
one thing that I've paid close attention to is, how do I manage this transition in terms of making sure that I still have some kind of income. So I'm very lucky that the work that I do as a coach, I do mainly remotely anyway. So it's not going to interfere with that. But the other work that I do, and that I really want to carry on doing, because I get a lot of fulfillment from that, is I deliver training. So 2 to 3 day workshops, and sort of I do a couple of different things which require me to travel. One of the concerns that I have that I still need to check out is, our plan being that we want to go and volunteer. I'm worried that, like, the eco-villages might not be flexible and say, either you volunteer or we don't want you. You can't sort of take like a week out because you have to go and do this workshop, because it's not just the workshop. I also need sort of a little bit of space beforehand, and I need recovery time afterwards.
mm,
So I have a concern around that. So yeah, I have to see how that pans out. And obviously that will be in conversation with whatever, eco-village we contact. So finding that out. Another concern that I have is around the lifestyle in community, because one thing that I'm aware of is, or at least in my current lifestyle, I really need to make sure that I get enough rest. And one of the ways in which I get that is actually by not being with anyone for periods of time. So being able to sleep alone, for example, is really important. And so one worry that I have is like, will I be able to do that? Or is that going to be some kind of luxury that I can't have? And so then being worried about the impact it will have on me physically. Will I be exhausted and not be able to maintain this kind of, you know, lifestyle? I'm thinking particularly, you know, as when we go and volunteer, because what I'm imagining is that as a volunteer, I've got, I'm entitled to fewer sort of demands in terms of, you know, my needs.
That's, yeah, I find that really interesting. And because I've been, yeah, people won't know, but you know, but I've been volunteering in communities now for like 5 or 6 years, you know, on and off, but yeah, probably half of that. Yeah, and I lived in the gift economy, you know, for a long time as well. So where everything was, you know, I was just giving and open to what people would give back.
Yeah.
It's a very, very different dynamic to a financial contract, you know, which is I'll give you this amount of money and you give me A, B, C, D, and E, and these are my rights.
Yeah.
But I think what I've learned in the end is that my needs are still my needs, and there's still an exchange going on. Like when you volunteer in a village, and maybe we should just make it clear what volunteering actually is.
Yeah.
Which for me, it's like a lot of eco-villages. It's like woofing. People may have heard of woofing, but you know, a lot of eco-villages will say, well, look, you know, you do 4 hours a day of work, 5 days a week, and we'll give you accommodation and food.
That's right.
And variations on that, because it's all completely negotiable. For example, the village I'm staying in at the moment said, we don't want to do food, so therefore you work 2 hours a day. I'm like, okay, well that's you know, it's a quiet time of year, it's winter, you know, we're happy to do that. So everything in the end is negotiable.
Right.
Of course, not everyone will want to negotiate. You know, some people will just say no. But I think the dynamic around creating a fair exchange, which is, I mean, if we unpack what that is, I guess it's a fair exchange is kind of like everyone benefits and everyone's needs gets met.
That's right.
That could be a rough definition. Yeah, win-win. Then it's really important to identify what your needs are and to be assertive about them. And personally, I still find that a bit of a journey for me and a challenge for me. Like I remember when I first came here, I was in a room that had no ventilation, and I'd be waking up twice in the middle of the night, opening the doors and trying to get air in. Of course, it was, you know, I was like, felt like I was suffocating at 3 a.m.
Not nice.
Not nice. No, not nice. I mean, gorgeous. I mean, yeah, gorgeous community, but just this room for some reason doesn't have a window that opens.
Yeah.
And I felt really guilty about going and saying to them, you know, exactly what you're talking about. Oh, I'm a volunteer. And I felt really guilty about saying to them, look, I don't know if this room really works for me.
Yeah.
And they were so lovely about it. They're like, oh my God, yeah, no, change, and fix it. So
it's interesting. It's just making me realize, like, as you say that, it's like, what are all the kind of the assumptions and beliefs that we have around volunteering?
Yeah.
That means that suddenly we feel that we have no rights, or that we're kind of asking for too much just to have like very basic needs met.
Yeah, look, exactly. And I try and avoid the word volunteering, and I try and get rid of it altogether because, you know, what often, you know, there's a number of dynamics that come up about it. Like people who are volunteers will say, well, I'm not going to, you know, it doesn't matter if I don't do what I say I'm going to do because I'm just a volunteer. I'm not getting paid for it. and then on the flip side of it, the I've just lost that thread. Anyway, on the flip side of it, people will go, well, you're a volunteer, therefore you're not entitled to X, Y, or Z, or that there can be volunteer abuse out there.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, I know what I was going to say. So on the flip side of it, people will say, well, we're providing you with this, you're not paying for it. You're a volunteer. And none of that makes any sense to me anymore.
That's right.
Because my response to that is, well, hold on a second. I'm giving you 20 hours a week of my life. I'm doing all this work. Don't, I think I am paying for it. I'm not paying you for it in money. Like somehow we're so conditioned that if there's not a monetary exchange, then it's not valued, or it's not, we don't feel good about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I kind of try and simplify it in my mind to look, let's define an exchange, and let's be honorable and integral about it, and treat each other kindly.
Yeah.
And if that's the world that we want to create, which is a world of kindness and reciprocity and generosity, then let's do it. And kindness to ourselves and generosity to ourselves as well.
That's right. I just love what you're describing, because that feels so much more empowering, right? Than I'm a volunteer, I have no rights, or the flip side of that, like you were saying. Because it's empowering, because as I listen to you, it gives me the opportunity to be true to what really matters to me. And those are the things that you've just said, the kindness and the generosity, and because that is what I want to create in the world. Yeah. That's pretty cool. And it's making me feel less worried about what I was describing. And again, like I have to say that knowing that we've got this base at my parents is really reassuring, because we don't have, it takes away that fear of like, shit, if this doesn't work, then we're without anywhere to go. And I realize, I just feel very grateful for that. And that actually brings up another sort of concern that I have. That's a real, I'm finding it really, I don't know how to resolve this. It's around our transport and how we move, how we get ourselves from Ecovillage to Ecovillage. Because part of the reason I'm doing this is I want to sort of limit my environmental impact. Yeah. And being two people in a car isn't great for that. And also, we're not rich enough to buy, a sort of an electric car or something that has a lower impact. But the downside of not having a car feels really limiting and just not comfortable, for reasons. For example, if it doesn't, for any reason, it doesn't work out in an eco-village. And also in terms of supporting myself to be able to do the work that I do, if I have to go away, I want to have, it's sort of that fear of what will happen if I'm not free to move as I please, or as I need to. It's a real tough one for me. Yeah, it's a big one. It's 100%. It's a big one. And like even now, like I don't have a car where I am, and it's a little bit constraining in my freedoms. Like I just don't get to go where I want to go when I want to go. Yeah. I mean, there's a fantastic lift sharing thing that goes on here. Yeah. And there's 20 families here, so there's quite a bit of travel to the local town and stuff. But sometimes it's like the day I want to do it, people aren't going. Yeah. And so it does bring out it does create some kind of restriction and constraint. And I can't just go and say, right, I want to pop down there for half an hour and then come straight back because I got to do this and this and this. So it's very much, so sometimes I'll have to go into town, want to be in there for 20 minutes, but then the lift doesn't come back for 3 hours or 2 hours.
but then that's kind of just adapting to that's adapting to the situation and going, okay, well, if I take my laptop and go to a cafe and sit there for 2 hours
Yeah,
to
yeah,
work, and then come back, is it the
yeah,
way I would have chosen to live to do today? No, it's not. But
yeah,
it's making the most of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I don't know, there is something about letting go of I don't know, instant convenience or something that
yeah.
that
I
is
see that.
that is useful, but at the same time, you don't want to let go of it too much,
Yeah,
and still look after our needs.
yeah.
So, I mean, from my perspective, yeah, look, the transport thing is an interesting one, and there's two things that you brought up. I think one is the sustainability of it, and the other
Mhm.
one is the freedom, but also almost the safety aspect of it. Like, I can
Mm.
go when I need to go.
Mm.
Um, and my perspective, I think we all have to come to peace with the impact we're making on the planet.
Mm.
And
How do you do that?
good question. Well, look, fundamentally to me, it feels like we don't have to, but fundamentally it feels like to me there's a need to acknowledge my value as a being on this planet and that I'm part of this. Therefore, I have needs that need to be met that are destructive to things outside me, whether it's eating a plant or eating an animal or
Mm.
walking down the grass and squashing ants or worms or whatever. um, and I also have a massive amount of benefit to what's going on as well. So for me, it's finding that value and that self-love and understanding the interconnectedness of things, because everything is an output. Everything I eat, my inputs are an output of some other process, and we live in closed circular loop processes. So I may well be eating the worms and the soil that what I'm consuming now, but when my body dies, it goes back to the soil and it goes back to the worms, and the worms eat me.
Mm.
So yeah, the last laugh's on me in the end, or at least in this body, right? And of course, we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. We eat food and we create waste, but there is no waste. It's food for something else. So there's a very deep kind of sense of the rightness and the interconnectedness of things,
Mm.
and that I have a right to be here just as much as everybody else, every other, and by everybody, I mean everything,
Mm.
every man, woman, child, plant, animal, microbe, etc. Rock, and I'm part of it. I'm not separate from it, and
Mm.
it kind of like I feel a real sadness about. There's a bit of a wave of anti-humanism sweeping across the planet at the moment. Like, we feel guilty for being human and for disturbing things, and we are creating disturbances beyond what we should be, but to vilify ourselves and to make ourselves less, or to take an anti-human stance is an overreaction in the other direction.
Yeah.
And when I think about sustainability and the things like driving a car, again, it's a spectrum. And if you think of the transition a person might be making from like mainstream consumptive lifestyle to at the very much at the other end, like pure eco living, it's a spectrum. And I don't think we need to expect that we're able to jump from here to here.
That's right.
Instantly. And I would question even if getting all the way to here is actually useful anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, going back to being kind of, kind and gentle with ourselves, we make our
Mm.
transitions, and then we
Mhm.
find, we might find we go too far and have to come back.
Yeah,
We find the sweet spot that works for us for
yeah,
the moment. you know,
yeah. That's right. That's right.
um, and kind of part of the way I also rationalize, the people that are flying and the people that are driving cars is that, look, you know, if you're doing work and creating networks that are, you know, if you're driving a car around and using, I don't even know what the numbers are, but let's just say, you know, 10,000, creating 10,000 tons of carbon in the air because you're driving a car over a year, but the activity you're doing is saving 1 million tons, then I think that's perfectly justifiable.
Mhm.
Um, and that saving of that savings, like the benefits, so it's kind of like a cost benefit analysis, if you like.
Yeah,
But the benefits, may not be realized for 10 years time, or for 5 years time, or 2 years time. It may not be realized this year, especially if someone's in a year of learning, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, especially people, contributing to eco-villages, if you end up planting, direct actions like planting trees and growing gardens and creating eco-villages is just going to save so much carbon. Um,
Yeah,
and create the life that we want to create. So we're in a transition phase where,
that's
yeah,
right.
the way we behave is not going to be, is not the ultimate eco way of behaving, but as long as everything we're doing is regenerative, is moving us in that direction, then I think that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I'm getting from what you're saying is sort of, it reminds me that the way I've been looking at it is very much sort of, it's kind of linear. And one of the things I appreciate about this eco village lifestyle is that it reminds us that everything is circular, actually. So remembering that, and also that bit about, yeah, I've just seen that what my brain did was that leap that I was talking about earlier, saying, you know, faced with massive change, what the brain does is imagine that, you go from one state to the other state, and that there's nothing happens
Nothing
in
but
between. And this is a case of it,
yeah, yeah, interesting.
actually. And the other thing that I'm aware of, that gives me a lot of hope, is I know that I'm seeing all of these things because I'm on this side of the unknown. And that I know from previous experience, having, sort of um, made big transitions in my life before, I know that what will happen is that loads of opportunities will show up that my brain can't conceive of right now, because what the brain does is see the risks.
Yeah.
Faced with the unknown, it's much harder to imagine the opportunities. You just see what you're going to lose and what you're not going to have. That's
Good.
just how we're wired.
And generally, I find that most of the fears that I have before making the change just don't happen.
Right.
Well, almost all of them don't,
Wow.
never even happen.
Yeah.
Um, I think the other thing that comes up, comes up for me is that, you're in an amazing position because, you know you're a life coach, right? You're working with people, tens of people, who knows, hundreds and thousands of people over your career, and you're putting yourself through this process, and just one piece of coaching to one person, they could be the next, they could be the next David Attenborough or Nelson Mandela or whatever.
Man, that would be so cool.
So it is, yeah, it would be. So look, the ripple effects of our actions,
That's right.
just saying a word to a friend and shifting their attitude a tiny bit, and then that their effect on their friends and family, um, is absolutely amazing. So yeah, we truly live in an interconnected, holographic reality,
Yeah,
and we don't know the effect, the consequences often, and the power of our actions.
that's right. That's right. And you can sort of fall into the trap of sort of what I want to call the default brain, which is, oh, well, what's the point? What impact is it going to have? And actually realize that, again, when we don't know, that could happen, as well as the exact opposite, which is what you're describing, and having a very positive impact that we can't imagine.
Mm.
And I think it's really important to remember that, because I think it sort of loosens the grip of fear a little bit to create some space so that you can actually do something without being so attached to the outcome. Because when we're so attached to the outcome, it has the potential to just completely paralyze us, right?
Yeah, yeah, completely.
It just creates so much freedom when you let go of that a little bit. And for me, it really is like, I have no idea what the impact of what I plan to do is going to be. And the best that I can do is make sure that every single day, as much as I can, I'm living in accordance with what really matters to me.
Yep. And yeah, what else can you do?
That's
I
right.
mean, what else can you do? I mean, that's the absolute best you can do.
That's right.
Yeah. What an amazing way to live.
Yeah.
Mm.
To me, that I can't think of a better way to honor, this precious gift that we've been given to be on this amazing planet,
Mm.
actually.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I like it. The other thing you mentioned about the cars, or about
Yeah.
transport, was kind of the, what if it doesn't work? How do I, it's kind of the safety aspect of it, and and the concern about, oh, what happens if it doesn't work at this village and we get kicked out, or we have to leave quickly, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I think there's two things. I mean, you guys, it seems like you guys will be fine. I have no doubt about that. And it seems like, if you have a car and you have some money in the bank, then kind of what's the worst thing that could absolutely happen? Well,
That's right.
maybe you have to leave and go and stay in a hotel for a night or two.
Or sleep in the car.
Yeah, or sleep in the car, or jump in Airbnb for a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So, I think you guys, whatever happens, you'll handle it really well, and you've got all the resources needed to handle it.
Mm.
And it might be a bit different to the way you've been used to living, and it might be a bit uncomfortable, perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other fear, right? It's like that fear of being uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
incredible.
I mean, I think for me, I think comfort and convenience is two things that I constantly kind of are challenged with, and I have to be on guard about in my life, because otherwise I just slip back into, it's a literal comfort zone. It's not the metaphorical comfort zone. It's a literal. I'd much rather stay in bed than get up and get out into the cold.
Yeah.
Degrees, UK winter.
Yeah.
And I'd much rather have my room set up exactly the way I wanted to set up. But when you're living a bit more nomadically, from village to village, and then essentially living in other people's homes that live different ways and have different expectations, then letting go some of the convenience and letting go some of the comfort and adapting to the situation you find yourself in is a is a big thing. Adapting to the culture that you're walking into can be a bit of a process, and sometimes I certainly go, oh God, I wish I could just these people are crazy, but but of course they're not. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, because it's like walking that fine line between comfort and convenience on one hand, and then your needs. Because I can see that, like, because for me, the thing about comfort and the comfort zone is that sometimes that is a place where we regenerate and recharge.
Sure.
And so if you're like literally physically outside of your comfort for a long period of time, that in a way you could say that's kind of unsustainable.
Yeah.
So it's like finding that fine line. When is it okay to adapt? For how long? And when do I actually need to be clear about, actually, this is what I need?
How do you do that?
Well, having not been in that situation yet, the only thing I can think of is that's no different to the way I live today, actually. And that's sort of just staying connected to my felt embodied experience and be present to myself in the moment.
Yeah.
And on the back of that, just trust that. I think maybe the thing that needs to be learned and the capacity to be developed, and it's probably an ongoing thing, is it's all about sort of voicing what you need rather than, sort of belittling them or making them unimportant, and having the courage to potentially face rejection, confrontation, and all of the wonderful things that we imagine when we think of ourselves expressing what we need. That's all you can do, really.
Yeah, completely agree. Taking the time to become aware of what you actually need, and then having the courage the courage and self-love to actually to meet those needs.
Yeah.
But I think you hit the nail on the head. I completely agree with what you've said. And to be honest, I don't think it's any different to the way that you live, or anyone is living their day-to-day lives anyway. We're always in that process of extending ourselves, going into weird by weird I mean unique and unfamiliar situations,
right.
And then coming back to our comfort zones. That's a continuous process from birth to death.
That's right. Actually, there's something very comforting, about it, which is that actually it's no different from what I'm already doing today.
So you know how to do it.
That's it. It'll just be a different context, different environment, but that's all that'll be different. I know how to do this.
Yeah.
And that's definitely useful to, I'm going to write on a Post-it somewhere.
I know how to do this. Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And when I find these challenges like this comfort zone thing, and is it going to work in a village? Are they going to be nice to me? Are they going to be mean to me? Could I potentially get kicked out? Could I end up in a bad situation? And to be realistic, there are places around the world that are not like a lot of people think about eco-villages or communes and these alternative lifestyles with a very romantic filter on it.
Yeah.
Thinking, it will be all sunshine and unicorns, or hugs and happiness, right? But the reality of it, of course, is that it's not quite like that. Humans are humans, and we are still going through our challenges, and not everyone that promotes themselves as an eco-village or as a loving community is actually that way. And I do know of situations and have been in situations where I've just gone, these guys are actually quite abusive. And it's not a healthy place for me to continue to stay, or it's not a I've had other people have really, really interesting experiences. So part of it is part of moving into this process is not just kind of letting down the guard and assuming that everyone's kind.
Yeah.
Then not going too far the other way and going everyone's scary. So keeping that center ground, I guess, of what is it? It's self-responsibility and awareness,
That's right.
without the naivety.
Yeah.
And so then you go, okay, cool. Well, if what is the absolute worst case? And if I feel like I can handle the worst case, then something in me just relaxes and go, okay, well, I've got to, A, I feel like I can handle it, and B, I've got a little bit of a plan, which could be just simply, I get in my car, I pack my things, I get in my car, and I go to the closest hotel. Simple.
Yeah.
Or I drive an hour down the road and sleep in the car.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah, that's right.
Or I might have packed a tent,
That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Um,
Another option.
yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. I'm
yeah,
looking forward to exploring all of that. It's almost like now I'm wishing all of these things are going to happen just so I get to experience them.
yeah. Careful.
Careful what you wish for. Absolutely.
Exactly.
I'll have stories to tell.
You will
Surely
complete.
that's what life's about. I mean, what's the point otherwise?
Well, it's a process of building emotional maturity and emotional capacity, and physical and emotional maturity and capacity and adaptability. And I think this is the journey that you're in, the fast track journey that you're putting yourself on.
Yeah, and I want this. Like I'm really hungry for that, because to me that's another way in which I honor this precious gift, is that I get to, yeah, that growing emotionally and spiritually. This is, a big reason why I want to do this as well. I don't want to just be going through the motions
Yeah.
of, you know, I don't want that. That's not alive, you know, for
Yes.
me.
Yeah. Yeah. Agree. How did your friends and family react to this life change?
Oh, it was hilarious. It was hilarious. I'm thinking of one particular interaction that I'll tell you about. But so this started at the beginning of the year, and is linked to, I turned 40 this year, which I've never really cared about age, but this one actually did have a bit of an impact. And it sort of sparked this reflection about, if, exaggerating slightly, I'm halfway through my life, um, time flies really, really fast. And how do I want to spend the second half? And so I sent out an email to all of my network, um, telling them about this crazy dream that I have about wanting to one day, create an eco village. And I created a funding page to ask for birthday presents towards the EDE program that we did in August. And I was just blown away by the response that I got from people, the generosity, both in terms of, the donations that they gave me, but also like the emotional response. I think the one that touched me the most was actually a colleague who sort of left me a tearful voice note going, I'm just so inspired by what you're doing, that you're actually following what really matters to you. And I was so deeply moved by that. So that was one bit. And then when it comes to family, uh, the conversation that I had with I'm thinking of one particular conversation I had with my parents when we came back from EDE, and my mum was asking me how this fitted in with my work as a coach, and is it something that, did I do this to help me with my coaching? And I kind of went, no. And she was like, so what is this thing? And I said, well, this is about how I want to live my life. And her response was, I am dismayed.
Wow.
And it was just like, wow. um, it was, yeah, it was just fascinating. And after the initial sort of disappointment of, oh man, this is painful, my mum, just doesn't get me, I sort of recovered from that and chose to treat that relationship and that interaction as an opportunity to communicate. And actually, what happened is that we got to talk about, like, what is this thing, and dispelling so many misconceptions about what it is. Because I didn't talk about an eco village, we were talking about living in community. So loads of fears and sects and, you name it, were probably in the mix around their concerns. The fact that, they see it as us marginalizing ourselves in society because we are challenging the mainstream way of doing life. And so, yeah, now the way I see it is just such a wonderful opportunity to to just communicate, and I just stay, you know, connected to my heart and the love that I feel for my parents, to just keep talking about it, answer their questions. To their credit, after the initial reaction, and my dad right from the start, and my mum more and more, by just kind of having that conversation coming from a place of love, are asking lots of questions and are showing curiosity about what it is. And yeah, I just saw it as a great sort of practice of learning to stay in my heart when I'm faced with somebody who just doesn't understand, or, you know, has a negative reaction to it.
And kind of unpacking why that is, and coaching them through their fears and concerns.
Yeah, it's not even coaching
No.
them at all. It's just really, I mean, the best way I can describe it is like just really staying in my heart and staying open, staying in, you know, coming from a place of love and compassion, and completely understanding actually their fears. You know, I've got some of their fears.
Sure.
And just accepting that, you know, they might not get it, and might have a different point of view. And I think that if we can, that to me is the key. You know, you were talking earlier about like how to have these conversations. I think that the love and compassion piece is so critically important, and not making them wrong for having a different point of view from my own, because these are my choices. This is my response to what's going on in the world, and I can't expect everybody to see it in the same way as me and to have the same response. You know, so that's a good reminder for me, because I know that one thing that I can do easily is like fall into, you were describing it earlier, that sort of the blaming. And for me, it's a kind of sort of helplessness and disappointment that people don't get it. But actually, you know, part of it is like one conversation at a time, or one output. If it's, you know, something like this, something that they're going to put online, I'd like to write about, you know, our adventures, and remembering, even when I'm writing, like coming from love and compassion.
Yeah, well, I look forward to reading them.
Yeah, look forward to writing them.
Yeah, fantastic. And how long ago was that with how's your mum about it now?
I think more relaxed, and I mean, yeah. So this was, we had this conversation almost 3 months ago when we came back from the ED, and yeah, it's not that big a deal anymore. It's like, oh well, you know, Valerie and Fred are just doing their thing. They're a little bit woohoo.
Yeah. Sure.
We joke about it now, you know, and it's cool. Like, she can think of me as, you know, whatever, like slightly crazy hippie or whatever. It's cool. I know why I'm doing this, so I can laugh about it with her, and that feels really good, actually.
Yeah, fantastic. And you know, I guess over a period of time, and you know, she sees what you're actually doing and how
That's
much
right.
you're enjoying it, then who knows?
Yeah.
She may come join you.
Yeah. Do you know, actually, I mean, I've said to them, that is kind of my dream. Like, I would love actually to set up an eco village that my parents are happy to join me in, because another thing that breaks my heart is how old people are just completely marginalized in society.
Sure.
And the isolation and the loneliness, knowing that, you know, we're social animals, we belong together, and how old people are just sort of like parked in that way. Just, I find that horrendous. So I have a secret wish that, you know, by doing my thing and staying in conversation with my parents, that gradually they go, maybe this is not so bad as we thought it was. And, you know, they'd be willing to change the way they live and come and join us. Who knows?
Fantastic. What a great cunning plan. I like it. And I have the same kind of thing as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I would love to see that happen with my parents. They might be a little bit too old at the moment, but we'll see how that unfolds. Cool. Well, look, it's been fantastic talking, and there's so many other topics that have come up that I just want to continue talking to you about. But
I know.
I know we've got other things we both need to do. So, um, I wish you the best of luck on all your journeys,
Thank you.
inner, outer, geographic, and all the learnings you're going to come back and harvest. It's a really exciting adventure, and I really, you're an inspiration, and people that are making these changes and addressing this and in such a deep way is just completely inspiring, and good luck with it all.
Thank you. I'm doing this for me, and I just want to share. If anything I can do can help somebody else on their journey, I'm all for it. Basically.
Yeah, well, fantastic. It's the cup overflow.
Yeah.
Overfloweth, strategy, which is perfect.
Yeah,
And
really.
I can just imagine your life coaching and clients just getting so much benefit out of what you're doing. It's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. All right. Well, take care, and who knows? Maybe we can have a check-in in 6 months' time, or
That would be really cool. Yeah.
or regular once every 3 months. We'll do a quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd
Nice.
be fun. But thank you so much for sort of arranging this. It's been really delightful having this conversation with you. I've really enjoyed it, and I got a lot from it as well. Just in terms of from talking to you with your experience and your perspective on it, it's been really really helpful for me on kind of what's coming next. So thank you.
Oh, look, my pleasure. Yeah, I love these conversations.
Yeah.
It always surprises me how much I love them. I should know that by now, but anyway, it's great. And yeah,
Very cool.
cool. Have a great day.
Thank you. You
All right.
too.
Bye bye.
Bye.